Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Daily Bullet. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining me today, it's Wednesday, so it must be Dan Waz. Dan, coming from the great state of New York. Been a couple of weeks. Dan, how's it been going?
Oh, excellent. Working on a lot of stuff, and it's the typical, we're watching the Democrats try to steal our Second Amendment, and we're not letting them, and that's a good thing, but it's a typical fight.
Well, and while I was off, your governor up there, it seemed like, took the opportunity, and he issued some executive orders. What happened there, or what's going on with that?
Well, he likes to use the executive orders. It shows that he can exert power and leverage over the people that he represents. This guy really is a tyrant. Governor Cuomo's no good, and he likes to show, like I said, he likes to show his strength. So what he's trying to do here is this plan that it's like an executive order. It's called the Gun Violence Disaster Emergency. And what he's really doing here, there's a few things that he's trying to do with this thing. One of the things is he wants to invest $138.7 million in intervention, prevention, and jobs programs for at-risk youth. Which, okay, that doesn't really have anything to do with guns. That's okay, I guess. He wants to put task forces out on the streets to find the bad guys. Because he even said in a press conference, he said the cops know who the bad guys are. They know where they are, and they want to stop them and maybe confiscate their illegal guns or whatever. So what it's sounding like to me, which is really interesting, is Governor Cuomo is admitting that this isn't a gun problem. This is a human problem.
Right.
And he's being forced now, and I think all Democrats are starting to be forced to focus on the real causes of violence, which is gang members and people. I mean, human beings are violent. It's not the guns. The interesting thing is how they keep the term gun violence in the narrative. So here they are trying to create at-risk youth programs. Another part of the program was to create jobs and then and to track down the bad guys. But yet they still call it a gun violence epidemic. It just shows you that they're trying to keep the whole so-called gun violence narrative alive, but they're being forced to admit that the real problem is a problem that they caused through horrible policies, and it's really not a gun problem at all. It's a human problem.
I would think the solution that they're looking for is to take the people that are offending, more specifically, not gun people, but gang people, and when they commit a crime, lock them up for the full sentence.
Right.
There are a lot of judges that are time after second, third, 18th chances, and then the person really goes over the edge and everybody's shocked.
Yeah. Oh, how did that happen?
Right?
These people in New York, these Democrats who run this state, they don't have a clue. Maybe they do have a clue, and I think they're really just trying to, restrict the gun rights of the law-abiding citizens, because we're their real opposition. But like I said, they're being forced to admit it's not a gun problem at all. It's a people problem. It's a gang problem. It's a drug problem. All stuff that they create. Don't forget, Cuomo and de Blasio let hundreds of felons out of prison. How do you? Yeah. What do you expect? So now, go ahead.
Yeah. No. And that's there's in large cities there are crime spikes going on now, and I think we talked about this before I had my surgery. There are crime spikes happening after they let people out of prison because of COVID. They let out the violent offenders, and guess what? A few months later, there's a large spike in crimes.
How did that happen?
Yeah.
Well, the good news is they're finally having to admit, they won't actually come out and say it, but you can tell that they're having to admit that it's a person problem, and they need to fix it. And the thing that nobody's talking about is, like I said, it's a problem that they created with bad policy, with the welfare system, with the letting out of jail, defunding the police. I mean, I just don't know how any Democrat voter can look at what these Democrat governors and mayors are doing and think that that they're doing a good job. They're doing a horrible job. They shouldn't be there, and we need to get them the hell out of office because they're destroying our country, state by state.
Yeah. Get a couple comments in here. Robert Pointer says, Cuomo and many other liberals have literally lost their minds. What concerns me is if he gets away with this, what's going to keep other blue states from doing the same thing as a gun control measure? You're pretty much right.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, because once Cuomo does it, then Whitmer does it, and then they all start to jump on and do it. The good news is there's also pro-gun precedents that happens too. So right now there's a case that's going to the Supreme Court in New York City in the fall, and I think we have a good chance of winning that, and that will be historic if
yes.
Especially if we win it. So that's something that could lead to other states opening up their concealed carry travel laws and their, because in New York City you can't move around the city with a gun on you. It has to stay in the house. Basically, that's what it is. Right. And so they're trying to get that overturned.
Well, and there was the decision yesterday from the Fourth Circuit that 18 to 20-year-olds are allowed their Second Amendment rights. That's going to spread, just like we're hoping the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, when it gets decided, will. Let's see here. I want to get in a couple more. Where are we at? Get this one up. Here we go. Banjo says, of course, the Second Amendment is the left's main obstacle to overtaking and controlling the American population. Let's look just south 90 miles from Key West to Cuba. And
oh, God.
What's going on there? There's huge amounts of protest down there. People are protesting, wanting freedom. There's no right to keep and bear arms down there. Quite literally, the police could go mow down these crowds without a big deal.
Well, there were some gunshots today. They were shooting at unarmed. I saw a very short video clip where I'm pretty sure an unarmed citizen got shot. I don't know if that's going to be coming out, but they're probably the government's probably going to start getting desperate and start doing things that really they shouldn't do. And gosh, man, I feel so bad for those people, because how many years? 60 years? 90 years? What has it been? They've been living under this, this tyranny, and they finally had enough. Yeah. So they finally had enough, and the people are rising up. This is really great. This is really what drives me, is when people rise up to do the right thing and let their government know who they work for. And in the case of Cuba, man, I hope they keep going. I hope they keep going and gain their freedom, their rights, their human rights.
Yeah. Great question here from DJ Plainice. He wants to know, so for-profit prisons, how has this contributed to the gang/prison issue as you see it? DJ, I don't think it affects it at all. For-profit prisons, I don't have a problem with that in the least. To be quite frank, anything the government can be done less expensively and more efficiently by private enterprise. I very firmly believe that. So these people that are locked up, with a few exceptions, unfortunately there are innocent people in prison, but the greatest majority of people in prison belong there. And no matter what prison you put them in, they're going to have things to complain about. If you put them in Club Fed, they're gonna whine and complain and file federal lawsuits saying this and that right has been suppressed. The more the government gets out of anything, the better off we all are.
Yeah, I agree.
Banjo says Cuba needs a new constitution with an amendment for the citizens' right to keep and bear arms. Amen. Amen.
I always thought about that. It's like, imagine if we as America had to write a new constitution that would hold up 200 and 300 years into the future. I don't think we would be able to do it. Not with the way our ideologies are so different. We have this left-wing ideology that's just radical, and it's an anti-freedom, anti-rights. I don't know how we would get together and write a new constitution. We wouldn't get past the first sentence. So although that question or that statement was fantastic, if Cuba could do that, that would be a great thing.
Yes. Yes.
I just don't know how you do that when you have such ideological divide. Who determines what's in this Constitution?
And ever since I started the show, I will get 1 to 2 comments or emails a week saying you need to cover a constitutional convention, and I have not. In the 10 years the Polite Society podcast has been around, I've not covered it, and that's for this reason. If you open up a constitutional convention, you open up a huge can of worms, and it's not everything is going to come out the way you think it should, no matter whether you're center, left, or right. It's gonna be a huge mess. I think we're better off with what we have and going with what the founders envisioned to start with.
Absolutely. Our founding fathers were very smart. They saw tyrants, gun grabbers, socialists, communists. They saw them coming over 200 years away, and that insight is amazing to me. When I look back at the Constitution and Bill of Rights, I go, how the heck did these guys, how did they know? But they understood human nature and the evils of human nature, and now we're just seeing it play out in the left-wing, progressive ideology.
Yeah. I was just reading earlier today, and I don't know if you've come across this or not, but I was reading earlier today, apparently the far left Keith Olbermann, who, for a political commentator, he's a pretty good sportscaster, has now said, well, guess what? The Second Amendment doesn't say you can own firearms, just that you can keep them. And what do you think keeping is? Sorry, you think that the government's gonna send me a bunch of arms and then I get to hold them for a little while and then give them back? That's not what.
Yeah, keep means they're mine, and
yes.
Bear means they're on me.
Yes, bear means I get to have them when I go out.
Right, exactly. What don't these anti-gunners understand? I think what they try to do is they try to twist the words to the point where they really twist themselves, and they try to contort it into something else, and it's just not there. You can read the words of the Second Amendment, and it's pretty clear.
Absolutely. Our good friend Rob Pincus just commented, what we have now is the Founders Framework plus over 100 years of evolution and amendments. We haven't seen any changes to the Constitution for a long time for good reason. It should be a very high bar. I agree, Rob. It should be a very, very high bar to clear to change the Constitution. The last amendment to go through that was and this was actually put through over 100 years ago, but only became ratified recently, was that Congress cannot raise their pay until they have to wait for a congressional pay raise until after an election cycle. So they cannot vote themselves an immediate pay raise. That is the last amendment to the Constitution that has happened.
Yep. And that's why the Constitution, our Constitution, is so great, because it hasn't changed, and as long as we can hold on to it, like Rob said, 100 years of evolution, we haven't seen any change in the Constitution, and our founders were very insightful, and they knew what would be right for us moving forward. So I'd like to see us hold on to that.
Well, and to be honest, there were the last, going back to the 1920s and 30s, we had the Prohibition movement where they actually did change the Constitution, and then went back. It was when we did change those, we had to rechange it again. Not all changes to the Constitution are positive. So, how do I put this? I don't know how the heck we got Prohibition through to start with. It never seemed like a good idea any time, but they did get it through, and then they had to go through again a few years, 7 years later, and repeal it. And there hasn't been anything major that's gone through the state since then. So, looking here, DJ Playnice says, the Continental Congress was one of the greatest American convention. Imagine hearing those debates and arguments. I think they did an incredible job. They did, especially considering it's still holding up. Now, the world we live in right now is not the same world that we had even back in the 1980s. And considering we have a nation that has stood up, a constitution that has stood up from 1889 through 2021, that's astounding to me, and with all the changes it's been through.
Well, what's interesting is about the left typically likes to take the notion that because we evolve technologically and we evolve in that way that the Constitution should evolve, like it should change, and the problem with that is that although we do move forward technologically, we as human beings haven't really changed morally, and so you still have the same bad elements in some people. And so the interesting thing is, if we could change, if we could grow morally as we do technologically, everything would work out pretty nicely. But it doesn't happen like that. We have bad people in this country. That Constitution is there to protect the good people, and our founders knew something that just unbelievable, that they were able to write those words down in the way they did.
One thing, Dan, I don't know if you would agree with this or not, but one thing I've kind of decided over my 52 years is people are people are people. And I've come across that by traveling all over the country when I drove truck and meeting all kinds of different people from all over the country and people from all over the world, and that people are the same. It's just that inflection and language changes a little bit, but people are all generally the same everywhere. And so I wonder if people aren't the same over time as well. From 1789 to 2021, we're all the same. So the what was built so well so long ago still works great.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, morally, and we really don't evolve in that way.
Right.
We do a heck of a job evolving technologically, but people are still the same. Our thought process works the same. The way we, not the way we do things, but the way we think about things pretty much stays the same. And so I don't know how we're ever going to, create this utopian world that the left seems to want, because in order to do that, you need to have a moral society. And frankly, we live among people who don't have the same morals that we do. They're willing to kill you for a pair of Nikes.
Yes.
That is something that we have to be aware of, and we have to be able to protect ourselves from.
Rob's, let's see here. Prohibition debacle should be a strong warning to messing with the Constitution because of a populist whim. And then I want to get to what Butch just commented here. Here in New York, legalized marijuana, a drug, but trying to make firearms illegal, which gets used in a lot of drug crimes. I don't get it. I'm going to say, Butch, in this, that you're going to, if I'm a libertarian at heart. I do not speak for the Second Amendment Foundation. I speak for Paul Lathrop. I don't believe any drugs should be illegal. If you're smart enough to know what the drugs are going to do, and you take them anyway, and you end up screwing up your life, sucks to be you. You should have known better. But I would say what I would love to see is both the drugs and the guns to be absolutely 100% legal of the government to get the hell out of it.
Yeah. I've never really seen, pot and any other drugs for that matter, or excessive alcohol drinking. I've never seen that stuff make people productive. Mm-hmm. It typically works in the other direction. So I have no use for it. I don't care if it's legal or not. Do what you want. If you want to, slow your life down, slow progress, then do it. But that doesn't matter. As long as it doesn't affect me, we're okay. But the reason that they want that, I think, is because it keeps people passive. If you're high on pot all day, you're going to be more passive and more willing to do what you're told. It's the people who can think for themselves and take action and are productive in society. They're the ones that they're concerned with, which is why it brings us to his question or statement that's why they want guns. They'd rather, regulate guns than pot, because guns in the hands of good people keep governments honest.
Yes.
Pot smokers, they're not a problem.
No. And I would go as far myself to say I don't care what the drug is. I don't have a problem with legalizing all of them. I'll just say this: you get good and cranked up and try breaking down my door, you're going to have a real issue. But
right.
I love this. Robert says, do what you want, but don't expect others to clean up your mess or take care of you. Bingo! That's exactly where I was trying to go. So, all right. We are.
That's a good point. And I think what he's saying there is, do what you want as long as it doesn't affect me.
Yes.
There's no reason that I should have to deal with your drug issues and the effects of that, or the results of your terrible life if you're destroying it. There's no reason I should have to deal with it. There's no reason I should have to take money out of my paycheck to pay for you because you can't work for reasons of your own making. That's the thing. I think that's what he's saying. Do what you want, just don't let it affect me.
Exactly. 100%. And last comment, because we're getting down to the bottom of the hour here. Banjo has another comment. Crime sabotages the population, and that's what the left wants. To sabotage the American population so that they can take over and control us all. Therefore, gun control. I'm not going to say that's real far off.
Yeah. Because we're the opposition to them. We're the only ones that get in their way, and it's the gun owners, it's conservatives, it's people who have traditional American values, people who believe in the Constitution, Bill of Rights. We're the opposition. That's why the gun restrictions are so. That's why they push them so hard.
All right, and I got one more. I lied. I got one more. I'm going to get in. Speaking as one whose neighbor was murdered by a crackhead, I have mixed feelings about legalizing all drugs. George, there's a huge caveat there with legalizing all drugs. That means that everybody is responsible. Not just the crackheads, not just the people smoking marijuana, but the people like you and me who are now, the police are not responsible for your security. Now every individual's responsible for their own security in their own house. So, I'll start with this, speaking as Paul Lathrop again, not as the SAF. Let's start by just making marijuana legal, because I know a lot of people and that have been on that, and really you gain weight because you get the munchies all the time and you become very mellow. Those are the major side effects of marijuana, and it's got some pain release things. But I want to keep this mostly about Second Amendment stuff. Don't want to go way off on things that are not Second Amendment related, and drugs really aren't Second Amendment related. So, Dan, before we take off, because we're coming up on the bottom of the hour, very quickly, tell everybody about Good Gun, Bad Guy.
Oh, thanks, Paul. I appreciate it. Good Gun, Bad Guy is a 3-book series. We're working on the audio book version now, so it will be found on Audible soon. It's where I talk about the mindset of the anti-gun crowd, and I talk about the politics behind it, talk about the media's involvement and how they shape the narrative, the anti-gun narrative. It's a 3-book series, goodgunbadguy.com or goodgunbadguy.net. I also have a show called The Loaded Mic. That's loadedmic.com, and that's MIC. So goodgunbadguy.com, loadedmic.com, and that's where people can find my work. And as always, Paul, thanks so much for having me on the show, and thanks for the comments that came in, and I appreciate it.
You bet. Folks, everybody, thank you for watching. Thanks for everybody who's commented and who shared the show. I really appreciate it. Come join us again, 5 p.m. Central Time tomorrow, when we'll have another Daily Bullet. Thanks for watching, everybody.